What's good, YouTube? It's Jay here. I've been reading through the comments in the Empire War Remake Discord regarding 4.0 and a lot of questions regarding about how to play the mod correctly. There's a lot to take in, but today we're going to be talking about one of the key things that you really want to pay to when you start your Empire War Remake runs. The economic structure of how you build your empire. Empire War Remake is no longer just your typical Empire War where everybody's basically on equal footing with some very unique units and planets and whatnot. This mod is truly, like you would say, Stellaris, where you actually have to put in the effort to build your economy and build your overall structure. You can't just capital ship spam, you can't just go crazy with all the big ships. It just does not work like that anymore. But the fact that tech levels are now locked at the very beginning of all your playthroughs, you don't really get too many options at the very beginning to kind of mess around with all the big stuff. It would be way too overwhelming, and a lot of people would not understand exactly how you're supposed to go about playing the mod. So today we'll cover a few things, talk about the economic structure of how to run your empire. We'll be checking out the Empire for this also because they are technically the hardest faction to play, and I'll explain a little bit more about why in the video. Let's get started. I just realized I've been recording, my mic wasn't on. So we're going to be starting off with the Empire. I mentioned at the very beginning that the Empire is the hardest faction for a reason. They're surrounded by a variety of minor factions, from the Republic Remnant Forces or the Republic Hardliners, the people that are still loyal to the old Republic, to the Imperial Defectors, all these various pirate worlds, the Rebel Alliance out here in the Outer Rim areas, and so forth and so forth. It makes sense. Everybody wasn't a big fan of the Empire, and everybody's trying to kill the Empire. That's just how things have always been in the Star Wars universe. So you start off at a bit of a disadvantage in that area. But one of the key advantages you get is that you start off with more money than any other major faction, at least for a player anyway. The AI still cheats, and they're still hard to kind of beat in that area. It's really one of those Empire War things that's just truly hard to adjust. Sometimes they just get more money than you, no matter how much effort you put in. So to overcome the Empire shortcomings, you start with more money than everybody, and you also have a lot of expensive worlds in the core. The core is going to be your key area for generating a lot of your income early game, and you might have to just give up on some of these outer territories. Maybe not like Fonder, but maybe like Lorinar and Selenon and Bodajef. There are a lot of worlds you're going to have to just sacrifice, and that's perfectly okay. It shouldn't overall affect your ability to play as the Empire. So the Empire starts off with a lot of high population, high income worlds that you can also build up on if they don't have a lot of starting income to begin with. Let's take a look at some of the orbiting structures that generate your income. First, we've got the commercial trading hub. It increases the base income of your planet by 150%. So, I mean, imagine buffing this up to about double, more than double than what it is. These are the early structures you're going to want to start with. You want to build your economic structures first before you invest into your fleets. You also have the administrative officer structure, which gives you a 150 credit increase to the planet it's above, but it also costs 10 population points as an upkeep. That's right, a lot of orbital structures do in fact have some kind of cost related to them regarding population. That's going to be the upkeep for the station, but it's not hard once you get a bit of a hang of it. You're going to want to build these structures above a large number of your worlds in the core. It'll also help with the cost of the ships that you have in orbit as well. It'll decrease their prices, or not their prices, but necessarily the cost they're inflicting upon the planet. Because in this mod and in most Empire War mods, if you have a fleet above a planet, it messes with that planet's income. One of my key strategies for avoiding this is to attack an enemy planet and just kind of leave those ships above it if I don't need to conquer that planet immediately. That way their cost is being inflicted on an enemy planet and not my own. That's one of the key ways to really truly avoid that. But there are a variety of structures that you could build in orbit. I don't have access to all of them as the Empire. As the Rebellion, for example, with the Besbin system, you could build abandoned gas facilities, mining facilities, etc. that generate a lot of income to those planets. Gas giants are going to be one of the targeted planets and systems that you want to go for it because they generate a lot of income. Pay heavy attention to those. These sector areas, these model sectors, the Senex Juvix sector, all these sectors, they're also the biggest income generating areas in the entire mod. You have a lot of orbital facilities. By default, these places have a lot of money to start with. You could build a ton of ground resources for them, and the best part about them is they're not mutually exclusive. See, the thing with this mod is a lot of these ground structures, like the taxation agencies and the mining facilities, are very specific to the planet that you build them on. If you build mining facilities on an urban planet, it won't generate nearly as much income because there are less raw minerals or resources. If you build a taxation agency on a barren world like Hypori, you're not going to really be taxing anything because it's supposedly supposed to be a barren world, mostly factories and stuff. So you know, pick your poisons and pick what planets you want to build these on. But that'll kind of give you an idea on what worlds to fortify and to not fortify, or to put these structures on and not put these structures on. Also, ignore me if I keep my headset off my ear a little bit. I have a thing on my neck that hurts because my headset touches it. But anyway. What makes the sectors good though about this is, since they contain a variety of worlds from barren to urban worlds, you could build both sets of structures on them and gain the max benefit out of these structures, which is incredible. You can gain all the money that you need from these structures in these sectors because they're not picky about, you know, the structures being built on them. They have all the worlds that you need in them, so don't even worry about that. For these sectors, you can either fortify them or just spam the hell out of your economic structures. There are levels to the economic structures too, and they're classified by this little dot right here, right above the name, right above the icon rather. So one of the key issues kind of right now is, and I believe it was causing a lot of lag and other stuff, a lot of the buildings early versions still show up in the build menu. Like for example, this taxation agency, I can't build more copies of this because I have a governor's palace here. It just still shows up. It's a bug. It's kind of hard to get rid of if I recall, but most of these buildings have levels. You can keep leveling these buildings up. You'll be able to tell a building's level by this little yellow dot right here. So the Governor Palace is tier 3. It's a tier 3 version of the taxation agency, basically. So keep leveling up your government buildings, and you'll continuously see an increase in your income. Same goes for orbital structures as well. The commercial trading hub have a little level dot right above their icon that signifies their level. The commercial trading hub has 2 levels, and they do a lot for your income overall. So just be very wary about that. And that's pretty much the basis behind all of it. It's not too hard once you get the hang of it. Here's our tier 2 version of the taxation agency. It's called the administrative office. So it's this, then this, and then this governor's palace right here. Same thing applies for mining facilities also. I believe we should be able to see what that looks like. Maybe we can't. Selenon. Okay, so Selenon is an example of this. With these local mining facilities, once you construct them, they give you access to additional mining facilities, and all 3 of these buildings can be upgraded. Once you build these 2 additional mining facilities, you can now you will be able to upgrade your local mining company into a tier 2 version of it, and you'll be able to tell when you're able to upgrade it because you'll see this icon but with a white arrow above it pointing upwards, basically saying you can upgrade this building. Once you upgrade this building, it'll unlock a tier 2 version of the additional mining facilities. So take advantage of that on your barren planets, because you get these tier 1 versions of all 3 of these buildings. Once you build these 2, you unlock the tier 2 version of this, and then once you upgrade it to tier 2, you unlock the tier 2 versions of these. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So build this first, build these, upgrade this, upgrade these. That's basically how that goes overall. One of the key things to pay attention to also is the Imperial ground base. Now, a lot of things in this mod have upkeep costs. This is your primary base. It has an upkeep cost, but it's not the primary structure you need to build on the planet to have access to everything. The first building you're going to build on pretty much any planet is an outpost. It gives you an income of 100 credits. But don't spam the Imperial ground base. You will not need that on every single planet. Some planets are just better off being mining planets. Otherwise, you're siphoning a little bit of income from them with those. But yeah, you have access to that on pretty much every planet. You have access to those Imperial ground bases on every planet. And that's pretty much the basis of the economic systems for the most part. It gets a little more complex over time, or it feels a little complex at first when you first, play through the mod. But over time, you get used to it. You know what buildings to build and what not to build. And that's pretty much the basis of all of the economic buildings. We'll take a moment to kind of talk about maintenance costs. This is the part that's kind of throwing everybody off a little bit, and attrition costs as well. Structures have maintenance costs and upkeep costs. So like the Golem right here has an upkeep of 15 population and 300 credits. The Star Destroyer has an upkeep cost or a maintenance cost of 800 credits per week. This system is implemented to prevent people from just capital ship spamming, because to be frank, way too many mods do that, and it's just way too easy to steamroll the AI after a while. The whole goal of the mod is to be a challenge and actually build an actual empire. It's a sandbox. It's like Solaris in that sense, where you don't just start off and just get everything you want and just go crazy. You actually have to put the time and the effort to manage your economy, your fleet, your military. Like, you have to actually put a lot of extra effort into doing those things. That's just how it goes. That's truly just how it is with this mod, whether you like it or not. Before I get too in depth with the maintenance costs, I wanted to mention one other thing too. Look out for mineral deposits. Again, this is another way to determine whether or not you want to build mining facilities. Planets with low mineral deposits are not worth building mining facilities on, truly. They just don't generate enough income to begin with. That's something to look out also for. But anyway, with maintenance costs, large ships all have maintenance costs, especially these capital ships. If certain ships have or carry starfighters also, that adds into their maintenance cost as well. So the Star Destroyer costs 800 credits per week for maintenance and upkeep. Units with a significant starfighter garrison cost less upkeep as their starfighters pay attrition costs over time. Yeah, that's my bad. That just corrected what I just said. But the bigger the ship, the more the upkeep is. But if it has starfighters, that kind of messes with that, lowers its upkeep. Now that brings us to the next thing: attrition. This is a part of the game or the mod that's throwing a lot of people off. Attrition costs occur for starfighters only, and what that means is when your starfighters die, they take a bit of their income, or they take a bit of your income away. So this only applies to ships that carry starfighters. It's like that because if you were to look at things on a logistical level, say like a Star Destroyer loses his entire starfighter wing, somebody's got to pay to replace those fighters. That's the entire goal behind it, basically. If you lose an entire squadron of fighters, you're paying for losing that entire squadron of fighters like you would in real life. Those ships aren't just free, you know? Any real military would have to pay to replace those units. So that's what the attrition cost is for. It's also to make it so you don't just throw all your fighters against the fleet, let them all respawn, throw them again. It's to imply that you have to use a little bit more depth to them. Now, this does not apply to fighters that you built because you already paid to build them. You don't have to pay the attrition cost for fighters that you built because, again, you built those starfighters. That's just how it goes, and that's what makes the most sense. And then after that, I mean, the attrition costs can be brutal, especially early game if you don't really have a good economy going, but that's why we advise that you heavily focus on building a lot of these early ships, especially for the Empire, because your first two frigates and capital ships / carriers all have an attrition cost. The Victory has an attrition cost, the Venator has an attrition cost. It's not expensive by any means, especially later game, but it'll mess with you early. Focus on building up things like your Vindicators, your Gladiators, your Vigil Corvettes and all that. Focus on these little ships because the AI also has access to only little ships pretty much at the very beginning. They can do a little bit of capital ship spamming with their Victory and Venator equivalents, but I mean, at the end of the day, you just got to know how to outplay them pretty much, and that's something you kind of learn over time as things progress. And with the way combat kind of works in this mod, everything has a role. All the little ships have an absolute role, especially in numbers. The Empire also starts off with the best early game bomber being the Skip Ray, which is a ton of firepower into it, but we'll go into this in another video regarding how to start off as the Empire. Overall, the economic structure isn't too difficult to learn. These buttons down here will talk to you about garrison costs, space filters, and a variety of other things. I believe one of them also talks about, I think it's just straight up the garrison costs. So yeah. Garrison units now incur a penalty when lost in combat to purchase replacements. The cost of the unit's replacement is the same as the standard build cost of the unit. So if you could build a TIE Fighter squadron, it would be 240 credits. So if you lose a TIE Fighter squadron from your capital ship or whatever, you're going to lose 240 credits. That's just how it works. But be sure to read these buttons. You don't have to actually click on them to actually get them to show up or anything. You can just hover right over them. Every faction has this. Every faction has a garrison cost button. Be sure to read all of that stuff in there. It's not something you have to mentally keep track of, but it's just to let you know why you're losing so much money in the middle of your battles. Overall, that's pretty much how all the economic stuff works. Go for those heavy clusters of worlds, those sectors, these sector regions. They have a big income. They really are truly your moneymakers. They're also your biggest areas that you can fortify heavily as well. But I mean, if you choose not to fortify them, like say like for the model sector, this is a sector I would probably fortify. When during my Criminal Underworld playthrough, I managed to actually capture the Senex Juvik sector, and since it was so isolated from everything else happening in the galaxy, I was pretty much able to focus on it being an economic powerhouse. Once you get these sectors kind of away from everything, you could truly change them to be economic powerhouses. It's absolutely worth it in the long run, and that's just kind of how things overall operate. Now, I made a video going over the instructions of this mod. Be sure to look out, like I said, for different types of planets, temperate climate planets, urban planets, barren planets. The instructions do mention exactly how all of those affect your economic structure overall. We'll take a quick look at what I mean by that also. So, for example, with the CORSAIR system, actually this might not be a good example because that's a system. Systems generate a lot of income to begin with. So Karita is a urban climate. That is, when you build a taxation agency on this planet, you get an income of 300 credits. Now, if you go to Selenon and you try to build a taxation agency, this planet is in fact a barren climate planet. So if you try to build this agency on it, it only generates half of what it normally generates. So barren climates only generate half of the normal income for taxation agencies. So keep that in mind. But barren planets generate more income with their mining facilities. That's why they're so crucial for these planets and systems. They generate way more income with these particular structures. So I mean, you get the option to build these taxation agencies because that would be kind of weird to take away that option for you. But just know why certain worlds are generating more income and less income. Like, there's a system to it. There's an entire system to it. Also, one thing to point out is that temperate climate planets, which is what Anaxis is right here. So, you know, it's a temperate climate. This one is urban. You also only get 150 credits from your taxation agencies on this planet. Again, there are very specific planets that certain buildings work best on. You can still build them on pretty much any world, but certain planets work better than others and vice versa. Now, some planets you just outright can't even build mining facilities on. Like, for example, with the urban climates of Karita, you can't build mining facilities on them. With the temperate climates of Anaxis, you can build mining facilities on them, but they don't generate nearly as much income as, say, Selenon would. And again, like with the urban climates, you just literally can't even build mining facilities on them. They're meant to be city worlds where all the people live and, you know, live a wealthy, happy lifestyle. But okay, guys, hopefully that covered everything or answered a lot of questions for you on the economic side of things. Hopefully the video wasn't a little too disorganized. I'm kind of freeballing here, but I'm just telling you based off of what I've experienced and how I played with the mod so far. Be sure to also upgrade your space colonies as well. The bigger the space colony, the more access to buildings you have. So, like with a tier 1 space colony, you don't have access to nearly as many structures as you normally would with like a tier 2 and a tier 3. Be sure to pay attention to that. That actually really matters. Like over here at Selenon, for example, we can't build any of the actual money-making stations because we have a tier 1 colony. But over here on Coruscant, we could build all this stuff or deconstruct whatever we've already got in orbit. But we get these actual options to build these things. And again, these are your money makers. Focus on your economy early game. Don't capital ship spam. You will lose. Focus on those small fleets. Focus on your money. That's how you will win this mod. I want to thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Be sure to leave a like on it and let me know what you think about the mod in the comment section down below. If there are any other questions you have, leave them in the comments. I will do my best to answer them, or if they're too ridiculous, I will ask the devs that I'm close with for this mod if they can find an answer for you, and I will reply back to you as soon as I can. Again, thank you for watching. I'll see you all later. May the force be with you all. Peace.